As my grandfather's casket was lowered into the ground, I overheard my son-in-law, Jack, murmur dismissively, "Forget about the estate." His indifference was a chilling betrayal on a day meant for reverence. What he didn't know is that my grandfather had a final trick up his sleeve. But what happened next would shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. Let's go back to the beginning. The day of my grandfather's burial dawned with a sky that mirrored the solemnity of the occasion. Gray, overcast, and heavy with unspoken grief. It was supposed to be a day of reflection and fond memories, a chance to celebrate the life of a man whose wisdom and kindness had shaped not only our family, but also the community. Instead, it was tainted from the start by the casual cruelty of my son-in-law, Jack. The air was thick with the scent of freshly turned earth and pine, mingling with the murmurs of guests who had come to pay their respects. Each whispered word and soft footfall seemed amplified in the quiet cemetery, where every blade of grass stood solemn and still. As I stood there, attempting to calm the whirlwind of emotions within me, I overheard Jack's voice cutting through the reverent silence. "Forget about the estate. I'm giving it all to the whims of fate." His words were as thoughtless as they were shocking, seeping into the hallowed atmosphere like poison. He spoke them with an offhand nonchalance, as if the legacy of my grandfather were nothing more than a trivial sheet of paper to be signed away, rather than the culmination of a lifetime of hard work and steadfast dedication. I turned slowly towards the source of this affront, my eyes meeting the indifferent gaze of Jack. His demeanor was appallingly casual for the momentousness of the occasion. There was no acknowledgement of the gravity of his statement, no sense of the deep-seated hurt he was inflicting with such disregard. His posture, relaxed and unconcerned, clashed violently with the purpose of our gathering, to honor a man who had bestowed wisdom, not wealth, who had prioritized values, not valuables. Jack's words suggested an unsettling detachment from the sacrifices and dreams that the estate represented, a bridge to the future my grandfather had so meticulously built. How easily Jack dismissed it, like sweeping ash from a mantelpiece, belied a deeper, perhaps willful, misunderstanding of what the inheritance truly meant. This was not about money or material goods. It was about honoring a lifetime of integrity and a legacy meant to empower the next generation to rise with that same strength and fortitude. The disappointment in Jack's indifference was a stark contrast to the fondness that surrounded my grandfather's memory. Colleagues spoke of his leadership, friends of his compassion, his legacy echoing in their stories, each tale a testament to a life lived with purpose and empathy. And yet, here was Jack, standing in the midst of these tributes, more preoccupied with his own visions of grandeur or apathy than with the tangible embodiment of my grandfather's lifelong toil. It was as if Jack's words had triggered a ripple across the ceremony, the murmurs growing louder as the shockwaves spread. This was a moment that should have unified us in shared remembrance, yet it threatened to unravel the very fabric of our family's unity. It was a moment that called for reflection and action, for safeguarding that which was most sacred, and standing firm in the face of dismissiveness. As I breathed deeply of the crisp autumn air, I resolved to preserve my grandfather's true inheritance, his ideals, his dreams, no matter the whimsy that sought to diminish them. Standing by the grave, the weight of each shovelful of dirt hitting the coffin reverberates through my body, a cruel reminder of finality. The overcast sky mirrors my internal tempest, each gust of wind sweeping through the cemetery mingling with the whispers of voices paying their empty respects. My grandfather, a man of quiet strength and boundless kindness, was now resting in the ground, yet his influence lingered, persistent and profound. Today should have been about honoring his legacy, but instead it felt tainted by Jack's thoughtless murmurs, overheard like a dagger aimed squarely at my heart. Cloaked in black, I managed to stand tall, fighting the urge to let the pool of emotions overflowing within me spill across my face. Tears threatened to betray my outward facade of composure. However, I bind them with an iron will, refusing to give Jack the satisfaction of witnessing my vulnerability. Each heartbeat feels like a drum signaling a coming war with myself, a battle between the silence I uphold and the fury swelling beneath my skin. Facing forward, I fixate on a single flower bobbing amidst the wreaths heaped by the grave, allowing its simple vibrancy to anchor me in the chaos of my mind. My silence, I've come to realize, is a shield. It is both a challenge and a refuge. In this quiet space, far removed from Jack's ignorant assertions, I can examine the disintegration of family bonds that should have protected my grandfather in his twilight years. This gathering, adorned with forced smiles and feigned consolations, exposes how easily one can slip into invisibility, even amidst a crowd wearing the guise of intimacy. Every interaction, every insincere word exchanged over the years layers upon the next like sediment, compiling into a narrative of neglect that has come to define Jack's relationship with our family. My mind races back to unwelcome memories, family dinners where my grandfather's tales of old were dismissed as ramblings, meetings where his suggestions were outpaced by younger voices hungry for control. In each recollection, I see traces of how Jack, once a dutiful son-in-law, slowly turned appreciative nods into dismissive shrugs. It is in these layers, this gradual erosion of respect, that I search for understanding, looking to grasp the truth behind Jack's betrayal. Yet, held hostage to civility, I remain silent, studying him through softened glances, waiting for any crack in his facade, any reveal of intention. For now, my quiet endurance speaks volumes, presenting me not as a passive observer, but as a guardian of my grandfather's memory. This silence prepares the ground for a future confrontation, a calm before the storm, when justice, both personal and public, will rise from the silence we refuse to break today. The room was thick with the tension of anticipation, each tick of the clock amplifying the palpable unease. The heavy drapes at the windows seemed to seal in not just the subdued light, but the expectation hanging heavily over us all. As executor of my grandfather's estate, the responsibility fell to me to read aloud his final testament, a document held close to my heart, yet wholly unanticipated, I was sure, by most of its intended audience. My relatives, gathered now in the echoing silence, filled the room with the quiet rustle of clothes and murmured exchanges, each seated in a semicircle of mismatched chairs borrowed from the dining room. Jack, uncharacteristically quiet after his previous brazen comment at the funeral, sat towards the end, his eyes darting between his hands resting on his lap and the resolute set of my mouth. My pulse matched each tick of the clock as I unfolded the will, the dry parchment whispering as it revealed its secrets. With humility and foresight, let these words be my final wishes, I began, glancing up to catch the flicker of surprise crossing a face or two, including Jack's, as they realized my grandfather's words would deliver far more than they bargained for. Somewhere in the distance, the genteel chime of the clock marked the hour, a benign reminder that time moves on even in moments of great import. The will states, I continued, steadying my voice to push through the surprise that lay ahead, that I, his eldest grandchild, shall inherit the bulk of his estate. This shall be executed under the explicit condition that these resources be stewarded not for personal gain, but for the purpose of fostering the development and well-being of our community. The ripple through the room was immediate. A sharp intake of breath from one corner, the shifting of weight and consciousness as the words struck home. My grandfather's choice landed with a weight that each family member felt acutely. For some, it was disbelief, for others, bitterness. Yet for Jack, I knew this revelation would twist deeply. The assumption that he could claim and dispose of what he considered his by marriage foundered swiftly on the rocks of my grandfather's poignant provision. This stunning twist in our family's narrative was not merely a rebuttal to Jack's dismissive stance towards the legacy. It was a testament to my grandfather's enduring wisdom and trust in me. In that room, filled with family, layered histories, and boundless expectations, my grandfather's voice rose unwaveringly from the written page, speaking truths that silenced past grievances and setting a course toward justice and community goodwill. As I folded the document once more, I looked into the sea of faces now marked by contemplation and quiet realizations. It was clear that a new chapter in our family's history had begun, forged not in self-interest, but in shared responsibility and hope for a collective future. In the hushed aftermath of the family meeting, the air hung heavy with an unspoken resolution. Jack stood there, his face a tapestry of embarrassment and forced humility. Yet his hurried apologies seemed like distant echoes that barely reached my conscious mind. There was an unsettling stillness in the room, a void where trust once resided between us, now replaced by the cold clarity of truth. I glanced at the framed portrait of my grandfather on the mantelpiece, a silent sentinel of dignity and wisdom, its presence a stark reminder of the principles I was honor-bound to uphold. As the weight of the revelation settled in, I found myself internally distanced from Jack's futile gestures of contrition, the insincere attempts to salvage some semblance of familial harmony. These apologies, spoken too late and too hollowly, fell like autumn leaves, dry and brown, covering the ground yet adding no value to the tree's life. My response was silence. A deliberate, impenetrable silence that spoke volumes more than any words could have conjured. It was not born out of spite, but rather a solemn commitment to fulfill a deeper calling. Walking away from the chaos that had defined the past few days, I chose not to look back. With each step, the cacophony of whispers and judgmental glances faded into oblivion, leaving behind only the resolute thud of my boots on the gravel path. The knowledge that my dignity had been restored allowed me to move forward with unbounded determination. My grandfather's teachings echoed in my mind, a chorus of timeless virtues, integrity, fortitude, compassion, all enriched by his unyielding belief in justice as an instrument for change. The rest of the family seemed suspended in an uneasy state between recognition and denial, grappling with the systemic blindness that had clouded their view. Faces once familiar now seemed alien, transformed by the harsh light of newfound understanding. I could sense the discomfort as they contemplated the harsh realities laid bare, forced now to reckon with the consequences of their choices, or the lack thereof. Embracing my new role as custodian of my grandfather's legacy felt like donning an armor forged in time's relentless forge, protective yet not restrictive. I was emboldened, empowered by the wealth of lessons he had imparted, not in material riches, but in the currency of moral clarity and unwavering spirit. It was not merely an inheritance, it was a mandate to inspire future generations, to stand as a beacon for those who might one day find themselves in the shadows of family discord. With each passing moment, the walls of the toxic environment I had extricated myself from receded into history, leaving me with a clearer view of the path ahead, a path I vowed to walk with the same grace and tenacity my grandfather exemplified until the end of his days. In that quiet, reflective space, the seeds of justice and redemption planted by him began to take root, nurturing an enduring legacy under my stewardship.